The 19th century has been characterized as the longest century. Beginning with the French Revolution and ending with World War I, it was an era of social, cultural, political, economic, and scientific revolution. It saw massive industrialization and the beginnings of modern railway systems and motorized shipping, as well as modern newspapers and revolutionary communication systems. With the longest century as a backdrop, the Dohmen Company family history begins in Düren, Germany. In 1832, Frederick Dohmen Jr. is the first child of Frederick Dohmen and Anna Karras. In 1856, after being trained in chemistry and pharmacy and following his father's death, 25-year-old Fritz sailed from Bremen to New York. After a short stay there, he headed west up the Hudson River, through the Erie Canal, to the Great Lakes, and on to Chicago, Minneapolis, and eventually Milwaukee, to find a growing city with a large German population and even friends from home. German-trained druggists were valued for their knowledge, so Fritz began immediately as a clerk in Meyer's new Apotheke. He met friends and quickly learned the needs of the local profession. The city was growing, and its leaders were looking to encourage better health, build new hospitals, and address the cholera outbreak. All these factors boded well for this ambitious young man with a good education and strong work ethic. And he put plans in place to open his own apotheke. Early in 1858, he returned to Germany to encourage his brothers to come to America. He set up suppliers for his new company, and he resumed a courtship with his sweetheart, Josephine Woolseifen. They married and returned to Milwaukee. His brothers, Peter, Heinrich, and Johann, would follow him to America. Fritz had $400 in savings and wedding gifts. He opened the Deutsche Apotheke with his partner, William Schmidt. Thanks to recruiting flyers, Milwaukee became known as the German Athens. The city population had doubled to 45,000. Before the end of the 1860s, brothers Peter and Dr. Wilhelm Dohmen were new Milwaukee residents. Heinrich also immigrated, but died in New York. Brother Peter was running the family drugstore on Reed Street, while Fritz expanded the wholesale business by doubling their warehouse space on East Water Street. With the opening of the transatlantic cable and telegraph, Fritz Dohmen began enhancing his offerings to the public by importing higher quality German goods and wholesaling them to other drugstores. The enterprise was both solid and profitable by its 10th anniversary. In 1869, a disastrous fire struck the business, but they were back in operation in just 6 weeks. Insurance had covered the damages. The new operation included manufacturing, and for 6 decades provided Dohmen's own pharmaceutical preparations. In the second decade of business, an 1877 Milwaukee publication wrote that Dohmen is one of the biggest businesses of its kind in the West, which enjoys an excellent reputation due to their integrity and the quality of their merchandise, part of which is imported from Europe. By the 1880s, Fritz's sons, Henry and William, were in college. Henry was interested in business and William in pharmacy. This second generation joined the firm after graduation. In 1883, his partner William Schmidt had retired to Germany, and Fritz decided to start anew by forming the Dohmen Company Limited. It was a turning point for him, as well as the company. The Dohmen Company expanded again in 1884 with a third building at 271 East Water Street. Peter's son, William Dohmen, joined the firm. At the same time, the University of Wisconsin opened its School of Pharmacy, demonstrating a growing commitment to pharmacy professionalism. After the Civil War was over, it was a boom time for American business. With a railroad network of 5,000 miles in Wisconsin alone, the wholesale business expanded to Michigan, Minnesota, and the Dakotas. The company had traveling salesmen taking orders and collecting bills. Helping too were new technologies that the company adopted very quickly: the typewriter, electric lighting, and they had the very first business telephones in the city. By June 1892, with the business flourishing and the sons well in charge, Frederick and Josephine returned to Dohmen. They stayed for 3 months. While they were away, disaster struck again on October 28, 1892. A neighboring business, the Union Oil Company, had a fire that consumed the Milwaukee business district, including the Dohmen Company. Fortunately, Frederick had insured his business, and he had a fireproof safe, so all the company records were saved. Insurance adjusters swarmed over the area to determine their losses. Dealing with unscrupulous insurance scoundrels, a 6-year saga of lawsuits ensued, fighting for the Dohmen family reputation and the company's financial survival. In the end, Frederick won all the lawsuits and was paid by the insurance companies at last. But the 6 years fighting the court cases had a physical toll on him, and in December 1898, he died of a heart attack at age 66. Adding to the family tragedy, Josephine died only 3 days later. The gay 90s had been tough for the Dohmen family, but William and Henry were well trained. They faced a depression in 1893, and while there was a substantial decrease in sales, they still managed to survive. They called a meeting of the board of directors. The chemist, William, 34, was elected president. Henry, 36, was more suited to marketing, sales, and operations. They took the reins, and with 6 salesmen, began to rebuild the business. By 1900, the company was servicing over 800 accounts. Their business expanded with the introduction of products from drug manufacturers with names like Eli Lilly, Parke-Davis, Merck, Upjohn, and others. They enjoyed new heights of growth and profitability, but slimmer profit margins on all drug sales meant that both retailers and wholesalers had to continually diversify their stock offerings. The latest drugs, sterilizing supplies, surgical instruments, and hospital equipment were added to inventory. As prices for drugs continued to decline, the company offered new profit centers to their retailers: magazines, cigars and cigarettes, pipes and tobacco too. Then a breakthrough came for these stores: the soda fountain craze. In addition to Coca-Cola and Hires root beer, they had carbonated water in a variety of flavors. It became very popular to stop by the local drugstore soda fountain for a drink and visit every day. In 1910, ice cream was added, and soon stores had 25% of their floor space in soda fountains and stools. Then they added wrought iron tables and chairs amid lavish Victorian decorations. Dohmen stocked all these items in their warehouse. Inventory expanded to over 8,000 items, and staff grew as well. They were joined by the third Dohmen generation, when Henry's 2 sons, Frederick W., 25, and Irwin Joseph, 23, entered the company in 1911. But a dark time in Milwaukee was coming. In 1914, World War I had begun and had dramatic consequences for Americans of German descent. At this time, Henry's skills in marketing would show the way. He produced an 800-page hardbound catalog, as well as a special ordering book for customers. He held plant tours for them, as well as entertainment. He managed the sales force very well. But in 1916, at the young age of 54, Henry passed away. His sons, Fred and Irwin, had to step in, under the leadership of Uncle William, to move the company forward as the nation faced some of its most difficult challenges. America's entry into the war in 1917 brought destructive anti-German sentiments and growing prejudice in a city with a more than 50% German-American population. Sauerkraut was renamed Liberty Cabbage. 3 German newspapers closed. Anything German became anathema. Both Fred and Irwin signed up with the Selective Service, and Irv became a sergeant in the Army. After the armistice of November 1918, both boys were back at work at the company. The next shock was the world's worst ever epidemic, the Spanish Influenza of 1918. There was no known cure, but Milwaukee's proactive leadership, plus doctors and pharmacists, came up with measures to curb the spread of the disease that resulted in the lowest infection rates in America. In just a few months, the company faced another business challenge. It was the onset of the dry years of Prohibition, with all its challenges for a distributor of wine, liquor, and medicinal alcohol. In January 1918, the 18th Amendment and the Volstead Act were passed, prohibiting the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors. After trying to manage the medicinal alcohol issues and strict regulations, William Dohmen simply shut down the direct liquor supply side of the business. No matter, the company achieved enormous success in the 1920s business boom. Staff in the office and warehouse, as well as inventory, increased on sales of $665,000. With his fingers on the pulse of the business, William increased the company's bad debt reserve as he foresaw the coming depression based on his customers' financial difficulties. The crash came in October 1929. The times were tough. Profits were shrinking. Company staff was reduced almost by half. But after 1933, there were no further cuts. And by 1937, things began to get better at the Dohmen Company. The recovery was in full force by 1938. And so, looking to innovations that would help customers, the company suggested modernization, meaning better interior lighting, air conditioning, in-store merchandising, and display windows. Stocking new items to excite their patrons was suggested. Flashlights, batteries, alarm clocks, light bulbs, and toasters were offered. The year 1938 began with great excitement and hope, but on May 10th, Uncle William died suddenly at the age of 74. It was hard on Fred and Irv, who'd learned from and admired their uncle. He'd been like a father to them. The mantle of leadership was passing to the third generation. Frederick W. was president from 1938 to 1947, and then Irwin Joseph from 1947 to 1952. Fred H., the son of Fred W., joined the company after college in 1939, and Irwin Joseph's son, Irwin John, his cousin, and a pharmacist, joined the management in 1951. Upon the death of Irwin Joseph in 1952, the fourth Dohmen generation took the helm. Fred H. became president for 30 years, followed by his cousin Irwin John in 1982. Together, they spent time designing the plan for Wisconsin's most modern wholesaler, resulting in a facility move in 1954, and then celebrating the company's 100th anniversary in 1958. Fred and Irv added emerging technologies and attained huge warehouse productivity, with order fill speeds up 50% and costs lowered by 25%. These steps allowed the wholesaler to grow despite intense competition. Fred retired from active management in 1982 and remained on the board of directors until just before his death in 2006. As president, Irv made the company's first acquisition of another wholesaler, Northwestern Drug in Minneapolis. Irv also served on the board of directors of the National Wholesale Druggist Association for 5 years, culminating in being elected its chairman in 1990. He also created for the first time an Dohmen board of directors, which he managed as chairman. The innovation was to include 4 outside industry professionals. He also expanded wholesale service offerings to include pharmacy management systems and prescription claims processing. Between the 4th and 5th generations, from 1988 to 1995, Bob Wendland was president and the only non-Dohmen to head the company. In the 1970s and 80s, the 5th generation entered the organization. Robert C., son of Fred H., began in 1974, and John F., son of Irwin J., started in 1980. In 1987, Irv's daughter, Cynthia Dohmen LeConte, began working for the company. In the 1990s, as president and executive vice president respectively, John and Bob oversaw continued growth of the wholesale business. The base business grew when they created a joint venture with another wholesaler, thus expanding the geographic coverage to 20 states, stretching from Canada to Mexico. John also followed in his father's footsteps and joined the NWDA board. He was elected chairman in 2000, just 10 years after Irv, another first. With economic shifts on the horizon for the drug wholesale business model, the fifth generation made diversification their watchword. In 1995, the company created a new entity, DDN Pharmaceutical Logistics, and installed Cynthia as its president. Shortly thereafter, DDN acquired a competitor and successfully outsourced services to many pharmaceutical manufacturers. The division became a national top-tier third-party logistics provider. John and Bob also changed the focus of the wholesale pharmacy claims division, Restat, to the emerging prescription benefit management business by installing a professional, experienced management team. This division led the rising tide of their emerging industry, creating a track record of superior growth and financial performance. At the same time, John and Bob were increasing the wholesale top-line sales to $2 billion annually. By 2005, Dohmen was a top 10 U.S. drug wholesaler. The intervening years, 1990 to 2000, saw the drug wholesale industry consolidate dramatically from 75 companies to about 25. The publicly traded mega wholesalers used price-cutting sales strategies that were just impossible to match. After several years trying valiantly to compete, it was decided to do as earlier generations had done and redirect the company into other healthcare opportunities. The company divested the wholesale distribution business in 2006 and created a new holding company. The fifth generation fully in charge, Robert C. is now chairman, John F. is the CEO, and Cynthia is COO. The F. Dohmen Company continues the family legacy of supplying quality healthcare products and services within the United States. They are committed to creating new healthcare service businesses and acquiring existing ones to add to the still privately held F. Dohmen family of companies. Spanning 3 centuries from its founding through 5 generations of growth, tribulations, and challenges, the F. Dohmen Company is still an all-American, family-owned firm. Dohmen exudes a tradition of adaptation in a changing market. Now, the 5th generation is looking ahead to dynamic growth on the occasion of the company's 150th corporate anniversary in 2008.
I can't think of anything that would please me more than see a family continuum in the business. If not a family continuum, that there is a continuum of the F. Dohmen Company. I would say this: live by innovation and perseverance. If you're going to lead the herd, do as Will Rogers suggested. Look back every once in a while to make sure they're still following. And then I would add the 2 main commandments of the Bible. Number 1, love your Creator with all your heart, with all your body, with all your soul. Number 2, love your neighbor as yourself. I would say embrace these as did the preceding 4 generations, and you'll succeed.